Hello and welcome to this webinar. We're looking at AQA's Power and Conflict Poetry Anthology, and today we're going to examine Kamikaze by Beatrice Garland. We're looking at the form and structure and how these are linked to key ideas and themes. We're looking at imagery and poetic language, and we're considering the context of the poem. Now, it's important to understand that the poet Garland really draws our attention to the painful dilemmas that are evident in war. Should a pilot die for his country, or should he live for his family? So this poem is in 6 sestets, and those are 6-line stanzas. Each stanza is 6 lines, perhaps to represent the rigidity of the Japanese society and how much inflexibility there was for this kamikaze pilot who actually found himself trapped when he made a life-changing decision. It's told in flashback, and it starts with her father embarked at sunrise with a flask of water, a samurai sword in the cockpit. So it's a third-person perspective in the first stanza, telling of a father who's making this decision to be a suicide bomber. However, in the second stanza, the conjunction but signifies the beginning of a change of heart. The pilot looks down at the sea and the beauty of nature and the memories of childhood. Yes, grandfather's boat. And by stanza 5, he decides to turn back. Now, stanza 5 is the only stanza with a full stop. This full stop shows the finality of his decision, and really kind of foreshadows the harsh consequences of this tragic decision. The final 2 stanzas are in italics. It's showing the fallout of his decision. His life has changed beyond recognition. Nothing will ever be the same. And the perspective shifts. We get direct address and first person. My mother never spoke again. So we realize that it's her own grandfather that she's talking about. The tone becomes very personal and regretful. And we realize that by the end, sometimes she said he wondered which had been the better way to die. He's rejected, he's mistreated, he's treated as dead by his own family. So the structure told in flashback with this rigid sestets and the shift from third person to first person shows the painful dilemma and this awful journey from life to death, from death into life and then death again, and the impact it has on the whole family. Now let's have a look at some of the language features. I think overall the poet uses the language to contrast the beauty and the power of nature and the shame and betrayal of the community. So nature and natural imagery is really intense and beautiful and rich, and some quotations like dark shoals of fish flashing silver shows the abundance of life and that how precious those fish are. But also that image links with the samurai sword and that sense of conflict between his love of nature and his love of life and his sense of duty. You also have some anthropomorphism. So the tuna is made to sound like a person, the dark prince, muscular and dangerous. It's a powerful force of nature. And his dad's own power to take his life in his own hands is short-lived. And then we have alliteration. They treated him as though he no longer existed. It's that cruel irony that when he chooses to live, he's treated as if he's dead. Now, I think finally, it's important for us to understand a bit of the background. In World War II, Japanese kamikaze pilots would fly manned suicide missiles into targets such as ships. And that idea of kamikaze, divine wind, really went back to Japanese history. In 1250, there was an invading army and the wind or the storm stopped the army from invading. So it's as if the divine, God has intervened. So those pilots were seen as a divine and a godly force to defeat their enemies. Now, we have to understand that many of the neighbors would have lost sons in the war, and they would have felt betrayed by the return of the kamikaze pilot. And also the shame and the failure is because those suicide missions were seen as a honor. They were seen as noble. A one-way journey to history signifies that the father would have been seen as a hero in his death, but he came back as a shameful man in his life. I hope that's helped you to understand the poem a little bit more. Thank you for joining me.